The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. It was evening on the day Jesus rose from the dead, the first day of the week. And the doors of the house where the disciples had met were locked for fear of the Jews. Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. Then the disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. And Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I send you." When he had said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven them. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. My dear brothers and sisters, first as we begin this celebration and continue on with this wonderful solemnity of Pentecost, my greetings to all of you, and a prayer as we will pray throughout the rest of this liturgy for the gifts of an abundance and the Holy Spirit descending upon us, strengthening us, filling him with our gifts, the gifts that we need as we live our Catholic and Christian lives. And with this celebration today, our Easter season comes to an end. It's a bit of a melancholy aspect of it this year that we haven't been able to meet at all through the Easter season in order to celebrate communally, but we've had this wonderful opportunity in many places to celebrate with the live streaming that's available. But it doesn't take the place of the church in its nature gathering together to celebrate the first day of the week and the rising of Christ, the mystery of our faith itself, and on this day, the great giving of the Holy Spirit to the Church, which still resides with it and which is given again and again as we live our lives in the baptism we've received. This is the great feast day that we have today, and tomorrow we will begin what's called ordinary time, which will continue on for us until we begin our Advent season in late November or early December. And it's ordinary only in the sense that it's not the great feast days and the feast seasons that we celebrate, especially at Easter. But maybe a little bit consoling for us that it's ordinary as we all strive to get back to something that is normal or ordinary in our lives. And that hopefully will be taking place in the next weeks. As you know, it's been taking place in certain jurisdictions throughout North America. And hopefully very soon, the government here and the Premier and the Government of Ontario will be able to be granting to us the ability to gather with more than just 5 people present. So that will hopefully take place in the weeks to come. And in many ways, as we begin those days, as we gather together in that first time together, it will be very different. And it will be very simple, and it will be simply an opportunity for us to gather to receive the sacraments and to give so they're there for us. But today, an opportunity is given to us to deepen our faith, to call upon the Holy Spirit, and above all to realize in this day and also in these days that follow the enormous, magnificent gift that is granted to us in this feast day and in the Easter season. And it will continue for us as we celebrate Trinity Sunday coming forward, as well as the feasts of the body and blood of the Lord, and these aspects of our faith that follow from Easter so naturally. The Church used to celebrate a whole week of festivities for this Pentecost feast, and I invite us to keep that in our hearts as well, as we reflect on the remarkable gift that's given to us today. The day before he died, Jesus spoke to his apostles and his disciples at the time in which he instituted the Eucharist at the Last Supper and the evening before his suffering began. And in those remarkable discourses that he gave to the church, which were recorded for in the hearts of those who heard them and then later written down for our benefit, guarded by the Holy Spirit, we see the mystery of Christ being revealed in its last steps before his final sacrifice and the final glory that he gives to the Father. And he speaks remarkably, encapsulating in many ways everything that had spoken before in the gospel, but speaking in a private way with his disciples and revealing his heart in a way that he had never done before. And at the end of those discourses, at the end of the meal, just before leaving to begin his suffering, he prays to the Father. And we had some of those readings earlier in this week, as in this Easter season, the Church reflects on those readings and remembers the words of Christ and remembers the mystery, especially of how his life became a glorified sacrifice to the Father. And in those readings that were part of this week's preparation for Pentecost after the Ascension, Jesus prays to his Father, and he prays that he be glorified as his Father was, but also glorified as they shared before the beginning of time, before he was born of the Virgin and came among us, to restore that dignity, but to restore that glory which is always with him, but has been veiled from us, veiled in his humanity, unable to be seen by us. You'll remember we had this wonderful reading in the second week of Lent, and it's a reading which we spoke of the Transfiguration, in which the Church allows us to see a glimpse of what awaits us as we begin our Lenten pilgrimage, of entering deeply within our human mystery, our human nature and its weakness, to see also the gift that is given. Christ, the veil of his glory, is lifted for some of his apostles and disciples who ascend the mountain with him. And for a brief moment, they see the brilliance and the clarity of exactly who he is, as if a veil has been taken off and his glory has been revealed. And it only lasts a moment, but it's a teaching moment and also a very instructive moment for the apostles and disciples to know the one with whom they walk and talk and share their lives is nothing ordinary. And this veil then becomes completely revealed in his sacrifice and in his resurrection. Jesus, as he speaks to the Father of this magnificence, also speaks of giving this to the church, of giving this to those who are gathered with him that evening, but then also the next evening, the day after his resurrection, or 3 days later, he meets with them, breathes the Holy Spirit upon them, grants them the gift of the same glory. And what is this glory? It's the intimacy, the profound love and intimacy that he shares with his Father, which becomes evident in his words and in his prayer, in his earthly life, becomes magnificent in the glorification of the Transfiguration, and then later on, especially in the sacrifice of himself and the manifestations of the Father and the Holy Spirit. This is what is given to the church. This is what is given to those apostles and disciples that are gathered and given in an abundant way at Pentecost and given again and again in the church for all those faithful baptized into the Lord who call upon the Holy Spirit for the gifts and strength that he needs. But it doesn't come out at a cost. And the beauty of it is, if we receive Christ's glory, we receive the steps that he took to achieve that glory with the Father. The humility of being shed and having that glory veiled, of being born of a virgin, of washing the feet of his disciples, of giving everything that he has in a final sacrifice to the Father. And that then reveals the glory in the most magnificent way that we have celebrated in this Easter season. And now that gift is bestowed upon the disciples and apostles. And if we wish to share in that glory, If we wish to share in that intimacy and that love that the Son shares with the Father, then we need to humble ourselves. We need to be willing to wash the feet of our disciples. We need to be willing to give of ourselves in a generosity which only human nature is able to express. And that's the invitation for us today. And from that, then all the other sacraments allow us to live that to the full, to share with something that God shares with himself that is bestowed upon his apostles and disciples. This is the reason for our great joy today. This is the reason for the magnificence of this solemnity that we celebrate. This is the reason for the joy of the apostles and disciples who on this first night of Easter see Christ, receive his grace and his peace, and then have the Holy Spirit breathed upon them so that they can go out and are sent out as he was, with the power to forgive sins, with the power to bring salvation, and to bring the glory of God to evident not just to themselves, but to all those they meet in the humility and generosity and self-sacrifice of their own lives.